Mark Meadows. Mark has been a friend of mine for a long time. Mark, I really appreciate your service, your willingness to do this. I get to go to a Senate and to a legislature that's dominated by Republicans. We have a veto-proof majority there. And I wish the same for you someday. Because I just can't imagine the hurdles that you have to try to accomplish with so much dysfunction up there. But thank you for your bringing that and for the support of your wife, Debbie. I can tell you from experience, it's really tough to do these kind of jobs without a loving and supportive wife, and I appreciate that as well. So, Mark, thank you for being here. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. Because of the work of so many in this room, we have Senator Davis back with us. I mean, it was a tough battle, and quite frankly, I was almost as excited as with his election as I was mine early on, because we kept looking at the numbers, and I told him early on, I said, you know, have faith, and we're going to make this. But it's really because of the people that have worked so hard in this room. And sometimes without ever being recognized. I look around and I've got a lot of friends here that we go way back. I was telling Harold earlier, you know, I can remember when there were just a few of us in this room that were Republicans, and it was the Democrats dominated Macon County. It was not even close. And now what happens is, not only in Raleigh but in Washington, D.C., they see the western part of North Carolina as really the ones that made the difference. Because quite frankly, we wouldn't have had, we had 4 pickups in North Carolina in terms of congressmen. We really had, and the potential was that we could lose them. And the real reason why we had that was because of the work that you've done year in, year out, again, by having a Republican legislature that was able to draw fair and legal districts. Now what we've got is good representation. But I want to share a few personal stories, and I want to say thank you so much for giving us hope that the future is something that we can look forward to. And I appreciate your willingness to not only memorize, but also to take that to heart. And she said 2 things, and both of those things she recited. She talked about the consent of the government. And if we remember, it's the consent of the government that establishes any government, that what we have is a voice. And I want to just say that your voice is not only heard here, but it reverberates throughout this land. Kenny West, my chief of staff, is here, and Kenny, thank you for the job you're doing. When a couple of mountain boys go to Washington, D.C., you know, things are not exactly the way. And so I was sitting next to a luncheon the other day, and a congresswoman from Hawaii shows up and is sitting next to Kenny and says, you know, we're just having a real struggle in the district, you know, and she was talking about Hawaii, and she goes, you know, we've got 2 offices, and we're having a hard time figuring out how to manage these offices and get them staffed and reach out to different people. And she goes, so how many offices do you have? And he says, well, we have 18. And he says, we've got an office in every single county, and also an office on the trust lands of the Eastern Band of the Cherokee Indians. And it's the first time ever that I think that we've had offices in every single county. I know it's the first time that we've had it on the Eastern Band in terms of that nation. And let me tell you why we did that and why we were able to do that. I think it's probably more important. There are some county commissioners here, and I just want all the county commissioners, I want you to stand up if you would. Please stand up. I want you to thank these guys. That is why we were able to do it, because what happened is they wanted to make sure that you were represented. They worked diligently with us to make sure that not only did we have a good space, but we had a space you could find. You know, some of you know, the government agencies, they want to give you a space that would take, you know, 4 maps and 2 GPSs to get there. That is not true. Macon County has been very gracious, but they've given us a spot. But we've been able to do that across this district, and because we've worked together, we're able to provide 18 offices at a cost that is 1/3 that of our other colleagues. So not only are we giving better representation, but we're doing it fiscally more efficiently than anybody else that we serve. And that's because... But here's the other part of that, is as we start to look at that, you start to get some dynamics that happen. And so the personal stories, some of the county commissioners came up the other day, and we were there and meeting in the Capitol and having breakfast together, and they said it was a real close call. Jimmy Tate told me, he says, you know, they had an option that morning that they could go and listen to Nancy Pelosi or come have breakfast with me. And they said Nancy Pelosi or breakfast with Mark. And I was thankful that I won out on that. What?
You even got the Democratic commissioner.
Yeah, that's right. And so as we see that, one of the things that we want to make sure of is that we are available and that we respond. And so if we're not responding, we want to know about it. In the first 70 days, we've answered about 7,000 letters we've sent out from our office in the first 70 days. And so you can imagine the kind of volume that we have. And so when we look at that, it's not only the phone calls that we get, but the letters that we get coming in. The tours that we have. If you're coming to Washington, D.C., you know, we would love to set up all the tours that we possibly can, with the exception of one, which would be the White House. Oh, I forgot about that. The White House. You know, here's the interesting thing: is President Obama came the other day, and he was meeting with the Republican conference for the first time since he's been president. So he came over, he met with us. And he told us the reason why we're not having White House tours was because the Secret Service told him that we couldn't have White House tours. Now here's the President of the United States, and he's blaming it on the Secret Service because they're the ones that said it. And there was a big moan that went out among most of my colleagues that, you know, would say, come on, what we're doing is trying to show where the pain is when we start to cut back on our budget. Now, all we did was took 2 cents out of every dollar. We took 2 cents out of every dollar from the cut. And what you're hearing is that there's going to be 90-minute delays at a lot of the major airports. Did you hear that? Yeah. Well, let me share a little bit about we're about to introduce a piece of legislation that hopefully will help fix that. We're going to call it the Furlough Reduction Act, and hopefully it will come out this week, because here is the truth about the FAA. I interviewed the FAA and said, you know, were these 90-minute delays based on any real data? He said, well, no, it was really just an overarching theme that we're going to have to make some cuts. I said, so in your testimony you talked about the fact that we had these interviews with some of the unions and the workers and the management. You know, specifically, what interviews did you do while you were there to determine that we were going to have 90-minute delay? So, well, really, we didn't have any interviews. It was more of an overarching kind of just philosophy that we were going to have 90-minute delays. So I went on a little bit further. I said, you know, you're sitting here trying to tell us that we've got 90-minute delays that are going to happen throughout because of a 2-cent cut. Aren't there other areas that we can cut? You said that you've come up with a plan. Tell me, how long have you been working on that plan, and is it complete? He says, well, really, we don't have a plan. It's just an overarching okay. So with that, we started just doing a little digging. I told our staff to go back and do a little digging, and Jim loves numbers, and so do I. And so I said, well, let's look at a little digging and find out what's happening. And what we found is in the FAA, 86 employees who make more than $100,000 a year got $40,000 bonuses. 86 of them. $40,000 bonuses. Now 127 of them got more than $10,000 bonuses, and these are not people that are barely eking by. They're all making over $100,000 a year. And so what we're going to do is put forth a piece of legislation that says that we need to cap some of those bonuses. And instead of laying off the people and furloughing some of the people that are having a hard time, that we're going to just reduce those bonuses and make sure that they're no more than 5% of base pay. Now, when we do that, they're going to start screaming again. But here's the thing is if we continue to operate the way that we always have, we're going to have a real problem going forward. We have taken severe hits in the military. Now, you talk about real cuts. This sequester took real cuts in our military. And when we see our national security being threatened, by the time that it's too late. Once the enemy is there and you're not prepared, it's too late. We've got men here that have served in the military, and you know that you've got to prepare. That once the enemy is there, it's too late to start training. And so we have got to make sure that we stand up the continuing resolution that we put forth, the flexibility to the military to make sure that they can manage those. We'll see in the coming weeks some of those. But here's the other thing. We've got to change the fabric of the way things are done in Washington, D.C. We can't continue to do it the same way. And I want to share a little story with you with this. Infections in the hospital sometimes happen on a regular basis. Some 90,000 people a year that go into hospitals going in for help actually get an infection in the hospital and become severely either die. I think it's 90,000 deaths a year by infections that actually happen in the hospital. And so this is a story about stinky socks because one of the inventors, an Israeli person, looking at trying to figure out a way to make sure that the Israeli socks are able to be worn for a longer period of time without washing, started working on nanotechnology. And as they looked at that, they figured out that the reason why they would smell would be because of the bacteria that was actually in the fabric. And so what they would do is he came up with this technology to not only change this and not put a coating, because a lot of times in hospitals they can put coatings on there and they can see it, and as it goes through the wash with these high, almost steam like temperatures, it would take the coating off. But his technology actually gets it in the fabric. And so he was able to change the Israeli socks where they don't stink anymore. Now, why do we talk about stinky socks? Because that same technology is now going to be able to be used in sheets, in pajamas, and pillowcases in hospitals throughout the country because it's going to be in the fabric. And so regardless of where it goes, regardless of how many times it's washed, infecting ourselves. We need to do the same thing in Washington, D.C. We need to change the fabric. And I am here to tell you that because of you, and because of God's grace and your prayers and His support, you are helping me to make sure that the fabric is changed. There is a remnant of people in Washington, D.C. right now that are fighting the fight, and it's a tough fight. And they come after us every day. And the calls from the Helen Carpenters that says, I'm proud of you, I'm with you, and others in here, they mean the world. Jim will tell you, there are those days where you fight it and you think, well, gosh, I lost that. But a call comes from the district and you're touched by it and you say, well, listen, I can get up and go again. And I'm just here to tell you that I'm here to change the fabric, but I'm able to do that because of the love and support and truly the undying devotion of so many in this room. And I just want to say thank you on behalf of me and my family, but on behalf of a grateful nation that you're making a difference. I want to thank you so much. 94 years old, right? God bless you. quick story. Grandson over here at East Franklin Elementary, Robbie Holland, Sheriff Robbie Holland, had me over, and we have got a Protect America Schools Act that's coming in, and I'd love to say it was my idea, but it actually came from Sheriff Robbie Holland, and we've introduced that legislation. It's picking up steam to help with resource officers, but we visited the school. And their grandson, said, this very important guy, not sure who he is, but he came with Sheriff Holland. But he picked up so much, and he says he's the guy that advises Obama. And so now I've been given the task to go and find out why Obama won't allow Twinkies to be reintroduced. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Congressman. We'll say goodbye to you. I know you have places to go and things to do.